started. So today we're going to be discussing Salesforce reporting. We'll mention a few things about dashboards. However, we won't get into a lot of detail regarding dashboards, just because there's a lot of information to cover. And if there is any point where you're unable to see what I'm referring to or unable to hear me, please put so in the chat and I'll be sure to check my settings. My name is Lexi. I am a senior customer success rep with Aprika, and I am based in the United States. I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem a little over 5 years now, and with Aprika a little over 3 years now. On the agenda for today, we're going to review how to create, edit, and share not only mission control reports, but also Salesforce reports. We are going to do a quick overview of the Salesforce report functionality, review the reports that are already existing within mission control, and then we're going to get into creating some report types and creating some reports. We did use some suggestions from your inputs when registering for the webinar, so we'll be able to cover at least 2 of the options available from reports that were submitted, and hopefully we will go over enough information for you to build out some other report ideas that you submitted. The main objectives today is to discover how to find the mission control reports that exist, how to subscribe, share, and export your reports. There are some reports that were included in the 1.64 release regarding billing, and we're going to identify how to fix those reports in the billing dashboard. And I'll go into further detail when we get to that step. We'll also identify when to create custom report types, how to add custom fields to reports, and then understand how to create reports. So to overview, let's review how mission control works with Salesforce reports. Reports give you access to your data in Salesforce. So mission control is native on the Salesforce platform. And what that means is any information that you're entering into fields, saving records and things like that, that will all be available in your Salesforce org and reportable via reports. You can examine your data in different combinations in different formats to get a better insight. For example, if you want to review the revenue that's coming in from projects, or you want to manage your resource utilization, you may also want to use reports to keep data integrity. So looking through your data, making sure things are entered correctly, and just staying on top of the information that's put into your system. Any data that's entered in mission control can be reported on, but you'll want to make sure you have the correct report type. And we'll get into what a report type is shortly. Reports can also be used to track field history. So if you are tracking field history on your fields, you'll automatically get an object that's created with the object name. It will be object name history. So for example, if I'm tracking fields on my action, then it'll be action history. So what that'll allow you to do is track different changes that are made to fields. We won't get into field history tracking too much, but I can at least show you where that is. All right, so getting into the existing mission control reports. There are 2 types of reports that exist in mission control. Some of them are visual force pages. So that would be like your role utilization report or your revenue recognition report. Now, because those are visual force pages, you cannot manage the fields that are available there. The information is pre-configured and pulls from data that's existing in mission control. For your standard reports that exist, you can clone them and make changes or make changes to the reports that exist, and that'll be in your standard report folders. Today, we will be using the report builder. So the report builder is where you choose your report type, you'd select your report format, and then the fields that you're going to include in your report. Your report types determine what objects and fields will be used to gather data for your report. So if I have a report type of projects only, then I will only be able to see details that roll up to the project level. If I want to view information regarding projects, milestones, and actions, then I'll want to make sure that I select the report type for projects with milestones with or without actions, or with actions. Most times you're going to have actions in project. So your report format. Now this part, you'll either select if your report is going to be a standard report or a joined report. And then as you're building out your report, you'll have different formats that are created. So for example, if I don't have any groups on my report, I'm just pulling in data from a single object, and I don't have any columns grouped or rows grouped, then that would be a tabular report. It will basically look like a data table. If I begin to group by roles, I now have a summary report, and that will basically categorize the data there. You can only group up to 3 levels when using a summary report, and it's used to create a hierarchical list or subtotal. So you can then begin to use subtotals. With tabular report, you'll get a grand total, but it'll just be a single row of summaries. You also have your matrix report. So then that's when you are grouping by rows and columns. And we'll see examples of all of these as we go through our demo. But that allows you to summarize data in both, give you 2 levels of summarization. You can also use compare related totals or analyze a large amount of data. Charts can also be created and used as a visual source for dashboard components, or you can pull them onto page layouts. And we'll take a look at that as well today. With joined reports, you can pull together multiple reports and display the information in a format using blocks. Each block is like a sub-report with its own fields, columns, sorting, and filtering. You can have up to 5 blocks, and each block shows data from one standard or custom report type. All right, so and then once you get your data and everything in your tables as required, then you'll have your charts available to be created. There are also tools in the report builder that will allow you to create bucket fields, summary fields, row level formulas, and filters. We'll take a look at a few of those today. Your bucket fields are used to categorize report records without creating a formula. And it can allow you to create a range and then name the range for that bucket. That can be used for grouping, filtering, and further sorting the data in the report. Summary fields will be a number, percentage, or currency, or summarized by sum, average, minimum, or maximum from the data available in your report. And then your formulas can be created with specific information. So we'll take a look at that as well. All right, so let's get into this. Let's go ahead and take a look at the existing reports in Mission Control first, and then we'll go on to build some reports. So first example I have is a role utilization report. This will allow you to view not only billable and non-billable hours. You can view items that are excluded from your billable capacity and also holiday records. So you'll also be able to pull in time off and view overall capacity for your resources or utilization. So this report will allow you to filter by team, select a time frame, and then you'll be able to view information regarding the user or the role's hours per week, the total hours that they've completed, and then their overall utilization. You'll also get information regarding the capacity, billable capacity, target, and performance, and then the total scheduled hours for that role. So again, this is going to be a report that can only be managed by Mission Control. You do have options to manage the settings here or export the report, but other changes cannot be made here. Another report example that we have that is a visual force page would be the revenue recognition. So this is going to show how you're accumulating revenue based on time frame for your project. So you'll have your project budget, your cumulative scheduled billable values, completed values, your earned values, and so forth. So it's going to give you further information based on time frame on when you expect to collect revenue from your projects. This can also be exported to CSV, but again, you cannot make changes to this report. This also has quite a bit of customization or formulas that you may need to create if you want to pull that information into a standard report. All right, so let's get into some existing mission control reports. If you go to all folders, there is a folder called Mission Control Reports, and these reports will exist as soon as you install the application. If you have access to view reports on your profile, so that would be something managed by your administrator, then you should have access to these reports. There are quite a few here. Most or some of them will display information regarding your actions, a summary of projects. You also get a summary of forecast performance for your projects, some hourly summaries, as well as a resource utilization report. I do want to note that this report was created before we released role allocations and role actuals. So this report does not include holidays. So if you're going to use that one, just a note that it does not include holidays. Okay, we've also created some reports in the 1.64 release to help you manage billable projects. So if you have billing settings on your projects, you'll want to ensure that all of the settings are set up correctly so that you can invoice your customers on time and set your project details and forget them. So we also have a few validation rules on the project object to ensure that your projects are set up correctly. If you do not have those active, you'll also want to take a look at these. So to pull all of this information for billing together, we did create a dashboard for it. So there's two dashboards that we've created for mission control reports. One will be just a summary of some actions, some hours, and project status, as well as forecast performance. You can refresh or edit, subscribe to this report, and so forth. And then we also have the mission control billing exceptions dashboard. So this might show me, so if I have projects set up to bill from a standard rate, but I don't have any rate established, then it will show this project. That means I need to go and action that project and make sure my settings are set up correctly. Another report would be your projects with milestone billing. So if I have it set to milestone billing, but I don't have any milestones set to invoice on completion, then I don't have that billing set up properly, and so forth. There are two reports on here that need to be fixed if you are going to use the mission control billing exceptions dashboard. So that would be the time logs not invoiced before the last billable date, and the time logs invoiced before but not equal to the last billable date. So when we included these reports in the installed packages, there was a Salesforce limit that didn't allow us to include some of the filter criteria that would make these reports accurate. All right, so I'm going to fix these, and then we're going to get into how to share and subscribe to reports. Okay, so to fix the time logs not invoiced before the last billable date, for this report to show correctly, you'll need to add a filter criteria for the approval date is less than the periodic billing last date. So to do that, I'm going to open up the report, navigate to the filters, and then we're going to add a filter for the approval date. All right, so we're going to pull that approval date from my time log. And we'll want to make sure that it's less than the periodic billing date. So I had to change it from a value to a field. And we're going to select the periodic last date. All right, so now let's save and run this, and then we're going to see how that affected our billing exceptions report. All right, so let's go ahead and refresh our dashboard to see how that affected the records. All right, so we can see that number changed drastically. This is showing me that I have 15 time logs that were not included and need to be reviewed so that they are billed to the client properly. The next report that we'll need to fix is this time logs not invoiced prior to or equal to the last billing date. So let's open up this report. And the filter that we're going to add for this one is that the approval date is greater or equal to the periodic last billing date. So we'll change the type to field and select the periodic last billing date. All right. So this will show us any of the invoices that were not included and will be billed into the next billing cycle. I'm going to refresh this to show an accurate display for my billing exceptions. Excuse me. All right, so if you are going to share and manage your reports or you want to share visibility, that is managed on your folder level. So you can't go in here and just share an individual report. It will need to be shared in a folder that is visible to the team or to the users that you're trying to share the record to. You can have public reports. So if you add your reports to the public folder, then anyone will be able to view them as long as they have permissions on their profile to view reports. So you'll still need to be at least able to see the reports component to view existing reports. If I would like to share a folder with a team, then what you'll do is you'll come to the reports tab and you'll go to this drop down. You can favorite or share from here. You'll select who you would like to share with, whether it's one-off users. This is your Salesforce roles and subordinates based on hierarchy, or you can share it to public groups. So I would like to share this report with Colin, and then you'll need to select what kind of access Colin will have. If you have just view only access, you'll be able to view the reports, but you won't be able to rename or delete any reports you can only view the reports and who has access to the folder. For edit permissions, that user will be able to view reports, see who has access to the folder, save or add a report in the folder, rename or delete reports from the folder. Anyone with managed permissions for this folder will be able to view and manage the sharing settings for this folder, rename the folder, save, add, or rename any reports, remove reports dashboards, and so forth for your folder. Now, your users that have access to the folder will still need to have access to the content in the report. So if a user does not have visibility to fields or objects in Salesforce, they won't be able to see the data that they'll need in the report. So you'll want to make sure permission sets are still set up as required. All right. You can also subscribe to a report. So when you subscribe to a report, you'll be able to set a frequency and you'll receive an email when that report is refreshed. So your report will refresh based on the frequency that you set here. You'll also select a time. You can also attach any files, and then you'll select your recipients. When adding your recipients, similar to sharing, you'll be able to select users, add names, and you'll get a list of your subscribers once they are added to the subscription. You can choose to run the report by yourself or as another person. And then in addition to subscribing, you can set conditions. So when you'll only be notified if the certain conditions are met. Okay. I do want to note that this is a Salesforce functionality. So there is additional information available with like further details on how to set up permissions and things like that. And that will be available through Salesforce documentation. With mission control, you know, we can help you to make sure your mission control features are working properly so that you're collecting the data. But since this is a Salesforce function, we cannot help to build reports unless we are setting up a professional service agreement and doing so from that. All right. Now, the cool thing about reports is once you get your reports created, you can add them to page layouts and view the data when you're in the objects that you're normally using in your standard business processes. So for example, we have a holiday allowance report, and I want to show that on my role page so that I can see how many days off I have available in the system. And of course, that means I'm using holidays, resource availability, and holiday allowance in mission control. Okay, so to do this, I'm going to edit my record page. And I'm going to pull the report into the page layout. All right, so once this component loads, I'm going to put it above my activity and chatter on the right-hand side here. And I'm going to pull in a report chart. So once I pull in this report chart, it's already going to show me reports that are related to this objects and shared in the folder that have a report chart available. Once you have a chart, then you'll be able to pull it in. It's going to summarize the days off that I have available. I can add additional filters or rename the label for this specific page. There are additional Lightning charts that are available in the components for a Lightning record page. So For example, if you want to view a billing summary chart, of course, all of that information is being pulled from your project data. So you'll have to make sure that your objects are having lookup relationships to each other or related to each other in some way to view the data from that object. So there's quite a few summary charts and so forth that can be pulled onto the layout. All right, so let's get into creating a report. So before we create a report, we'll want to make sure we have our report type set up. So I'm just going to delete and create this report type from scratch. Your report type is going to tell you what objects and fields are available when creating the report. Once you select a report type for your report, you cannot go back and change it. So you want to make sure you select the correct report type. In the reports that we have, there are quite a few report types that are already created with like projects with milestones and time logs, activities, and so forth. You can also come into the all category and search. I'm going to create a role utilization report. So I will want to select a report that has role allocations. And you can see that we already have quite a few set up. There's also field level tracking on the role allocation. So there is a history report to track field changes. Now, I actually want to create a report for role allocations with or without role actuals. What that means is it's going to allow me to pull scheduled and forecasted hours from my actions. But if I was to select this specific record type, I would only be able to see role allocations where there are time logs associated or holidays. So that means there's either been time completed or a holiday associated with it. But to correctly show scheduled hours, I might not have hours completed against an action, but I still want to show that I've scheduled those hours and so I can have a better picture of scheduling for my project in the future. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a report type that has role allocations with or without role actuals. Okay. So let's go back to our report types. We're going to create a custom report type. If you do not have these permissions in your system, you'll definitely want to contact your Salesforce administrator. All right, so my primary object will be role allocations. And we are going to name that role allocations with or without role actuals. This report type is going to be used to view forecasts, scheduled, completed hours, and holiday. You'll then need to select a category that this will be stored under. I'm going to store this under my other reports. If you have it in development status, you'll only be able to have administrators and their delegates use this report type. If you want to deploy it to the wider team so that they can use this report type, then you'll want to make sure it is deployed. So now we're going to select the objects that we want the data to be pulled from. So once you select your primary object, you're only going to see objects that are related to it. I'm going to select role actuals. And then I want to make sure that I am including records that may or may not have role actuals. All right, so that's all of the objects that I'll need. I'll go ahead and save this. And then you'll want to review the fields that are available in this report. So I can pull custom fields that are created in the system into my reports. If you are using mission control report types, but you have created custom fields on those objects, then you'll want to clone our report type and then add in your custom fields so that you can report on them as required. So to add those fields, we're going to edit the layout. And you'll see a list of the fields that are available. You can come through in the object and make sure that all of the fields are available from it. What I actually want to do for this role utilization report is I want to see the hours per week that is available for each role. So to do that, I don't have the role object here. I'll need to pull that field into this report via a lookup. So now I can see all of the objects that are related to my role allocations via lookup, and I will select my role object and pull over the hours per week that that role is available. All right, so you can see here that field is available in the layout. We're going to go ahead and save this and get started on our report. All right, so let's go ahead and refresh this report builder. The report builder is the component that you will use to actually create your reports, and it's going to contain all the tools. So let's go ahead and search our new report type. Role allocations with or without role actuals. When you select this, you can get a view of the fields that would be included if you're unsure of which, if it's going to include the information that you're wanting to include in your report. So you can get a preview of the fields. You can choose to hide the report type as well once you've began building your report. All right, so let's go ahead and start. We're going to name our report. And you can add additional properties and details. We can also do that once we save our report. So usually the first thing that I do is I manage the filters. The filters is going to control what records are included in this report. And then from that, we'll select the data that we're going to view. So for my filters, I want to see all of the available allocations that were created at any time in our system. All right, so now let's outline our table. So right now we have a tabular report. It's not grouped by any information. If I was to include further details here, that would be considered a tabular report. So for this, I'm going to group by role. And that way I can see who owns or who is assigned to the hours on my role allocations. If you are unfamiliar with role allocations and role actuals, that object is used to pull data from your actions, time logs, and holidays to show forecasted, scheduled, and completed hours. So we created those to pull in the information from all of those different objects into a single source. So your role allocations will show forecasted and scheduled hours, and your actuals will show time logs and holidays. All right, so now that we've grouped by role, I'm actually going to make this a matrix report. So right now it's a summary report. If I had totals included on my display, it would display it here. You also have a few options below to give you grand total, row counts, and details. And I'll show you how that can be affected as we continue our report. So the next thing I'm going to group by is date. Now, Right now it's giving me every day that is included on existing role actual or role allocations. But I actually want to group these dates and view on a weekly basis. So once I have my column available here, you get a drop down of additional options to make buckets or details and so forth. I'm going to group this date field and I want to view by calendar week. All right, so it's going to break down that information a little bit further for me. Okay, so now that I have my group settings, I'm going to actually start pulling in some information. So one of the things that I want to view is my allocation type. I want to see if these hours are being pulled from actions or forecasts or holidays. Another item that I would like to view, just manage the area that it's going to be displayed. I also want to view the total hours scheduled. And this is going to summarize both billable and non-billable. If you only want billable, we'll use hours completed billable and then so forth for your non-billable. This one I'm going to pull total because I just want to view scheduled versus completed. I'm also going to pull in total completed. And then I'm going to pull in that lookup field that we pulled over from the role so that I can see the user's hours per week. All right, and that's going to pull from the role record. All right, now the next thing I want to do to view the utilization is I'm going to create a custom field. This field is going to summarize utilization based on some criteria. This is going to be displayed at the end of my columns here, and then give me also a line here for utilization. I'm sorry, not at the end. It's going to be available in this data table. All right, so let's go ahead and create our formula for utilization. Total hours completed divided by hours per week. And we'll want this to display in a percentage. All right, so now we're going to pull over the total hours completed from my role allocations. Your role actuals are going to be related to your role allocations and roll up to your role allocation. So I'm going to pull it from there. And then I'm going to divide that by my total hours per week. All right, so we are going to validate. You can choose to select only certain groups in your report, but I want this to be used throughout my entire report, so I'm going to select all summary levels and apply. All right, so now that I've created my utilization field, you can see it's been included in my report, and then I get a percentage based on hours scheduled, completed versus the hours that I am available for that week. So for example here, I completed 10 hour, Colin completed 10 hours. He was available for 40. He had a complete utilization of 25% of the hours that he was available. And we can see that he was scheduled well over the 70. So he may not have completed those hours or entered his time logs as required. All right, so right now I have detail rows off. I can choose to remove the row counts as well. I don't really need to see the number of records here. So I'm going to straighten up my report here and remove that from the layout. All right, right now you're only viewing some of the data, only a limited number is included here. You'll want to actually save and run your report if you want to review all data. Once you do that, you can also choose to add a chart. I'm just going to show you the add chart component so you can see that the different options that are available. So right now it's summarizing the total hours scheduled for each role. You can change the chart title. It's going to be displayed in different areas, and then change how the chart is viewed. There are quite a few options, but based on the information that's being summarized, you'll select the chart type as required. You can also choose to add multiple Y or X axes if you want to view multiple fields or information from your report. And then you can also manage the color that it is displayed if you have certain colors in your dashboards and so forth that you want to maintain. You can choose to show additional values or references. I am going to leave it as it's been set up. And I'll just click in here to show you the different groups that you can select by, or the different summaries and utilizations that you can select from your x-axis. And I'm going to leave this chart as it is. All right. So if you don't want to detail the role, you don't need to see down into the data. You just want to view the overall information. You can choose to hide the detail and just show your report chart in the data table that you've created. If you do want to drill down, of course, you'll turn that on. You can choose to also remove the totals and summaries. All right. There is quite a bit of additional features in the standard report builder, like bucketed columns and formulas. I won't go into further detail on those just for the sake of time, but do know that there is more available here for this functionality. There are trailheads and again, Salesforce documentation that is available if you need further information on any of those features. All right, so we're also going to create one more report. It's going to be a joined report. So with the joined report type, this will allow you to share data from multiple different reports in one. Okay, so let me just go ahead and save this and jump over to my other screen. All right, so we're going to close this. And we are going to create a report that pulls in expenses and time logs from my project. I want to see the total amount, billable amount for my expenses and my time logs, so I know the value that's going to be invoiced to my customer. To do that, I'm going to select a new report. And I'm going to select expenses with projects. And I'm going to start this report. So as of yet, it's not going to pull anything or any data from my time logs. So I'll need to select a join report so I can add in a block for my time logs. All right, so before I get to customizing, I'm just going to add another block. And we're going to select projects with milestones with actions with time logs to pull in those time logs that are related to actions on my project. All right. So once these blocks are in here, I'm going to rename them, make my report pretty. Here, I am viewing time logs. And then we're going to go in and set up our filters before further customizing our report. All right, so let's view all expenses from all time. And we also want to view all projects from all time. Now, I only want to include projects where time logs were set to be approved. So I'm going to enter in additional filter criteria. I want to include all expenses regardless of approval, but only projects and time logs where approvals are required. So to do that, I'm going to add filter here for project owner, not expense approval required, but timesheet approval required. And it has to equal true. And then role manager timesheet approval required has to equal true. If you lock these, they won't be able to be changed by other users. They'll have to clone and or create their own report to change the filters. Now, I do need to add some logic here because I have some reports or some projects where I do require project owner approval, but I don't necessarily require role manager approval. So what we're going to do is add some filter logic. And we're going to say we're going to see all projects from all time where project owner approval is required or role manager approval is required. So either or. All right. So let's go ahead and now that we have our filters set up, we are going to customize our report. So I am going to group by project name and leave my columns to my blocks. In my block information, I want to see the expense ID as well as the amount from the expense. The amount is going to roll up any amounts that you have for distance or mileage or any amounts that were manually populated onto the expense. If you have other fields calculating amounts or you need to summarize, then you can also create your summary formulas and pull in those amounts here as well. We are going to create a cross-block formula in this report. It's to summarize the amount from both the expense and the time log. Okay, so we'll get done in just a second. All right, in addition to my amount, I also want to see who the approver is for the expense and the approval status. And then lastly, I want to see the approval date. Now there is an approval date stamp. That field is going to show you when both of the approval fields on the expense or time log was marked approved. The approval date field can be manually updated if you need to change that to fit within your invoicing guidelines and so forth. The invoices that are used in periodic billing will go based off of the approval date stamp. So we want to make sure that is managed or updated as required. All right, so now we got our approval status, approval date, and then we're going to pull in that information for our time logs. So for my time logs, I want to view the time log ID. Don't want to include any action information. I want to include the approval date. And also pull in the approver information as well. Because I am streaming, my screens are beginning to load a little bit slow, but bear with me. I'm pulling that approval date from a time logs. Just want to close this column to see if that helps with loading. We'll need to see who the project approver is. Or if there is role manager approval. And then we're going to pull in the completed billable value for my time logs. All right, so this is what we're going to bill to the customer. I'm going to move my amount value up so that it aligns with where I have it set for my expense. And then we are going to add a summary field. So because I'm pulling information from my expense and my time log, which are those two separate reports, I will need to create a cross-block formula field. And it's going to be for the total billable amount. The data still looks a little crazy here, but we're going to clean up our report once we get all of the details turned on or included. And then after this report, I will show you that it is possible to further build out your custom role utilization report. So I'll just show you an example of a report that we have already built out in someone else's org. And then if you guys have any questions, we'll open up. All right, come on now. All right, so we're going to name this total billable amount. And this is going to be the expense and time log amounts. This is going to be a currency field because those are both dollar amounts. We're going to insert our expense plus a time log hours completed billable. You want to make sure you select value that's going to pull your dollar amount in instead of the actual hours that's been completed. All right, so pretty easy. Plus, sum it up, validate your formula. You can select where the formula is viewed, if it's for all summary levels or only selected groups, or if you only want to view it as a grand total. We're going to keep it at the summary level and in case there are projects that have expenses but don't have time logs. It's going to only show for the projects with expenses and time logs. So if I wanted to show it summarized for projects without time logs, then my formula would need to be a little bit different. So this summary is only going to show for both my expenses and my time logs. So now that we have that field created, we are going to add it. I'm going to add it at the end of my report here. All right, so now that we got everything on our report, I'm going to close that section, turn off detailing the roles. And what that means is if I want to click into a role and view further information, I can. into the record count. I'm going to turn that off because I just want to see a summary of this information. My amount is pulling in something else here. Okay, so my formula field is calculating something else. For the sake of time, I'm going to move forward, but I would most likely just review how my formula is set up to make sure the amounts are populating correctly. For the sake of time, again, I'm going to go ahead and move over to the other report that I wanted to show you guys, and then we'll open up for questions for about 10 minutes and go ahead and call it. Okay, so that's how I create a joined report. The other report that we have available, so this utilization report has a group of summary formula fields that determine capacity. So this is going to look similar to how our role utilization report is created. You can summarize that information here and then pull it onto your report, sort it by role. So I'll just go into the hours per week performance calculation just to show you how some of these are created. It's going to pull the utilization billable amount from my role actuals divided by the hours per week defined on my role allocations. That's going to give me my hours per week performance. And so just to give you an example of further building out your role utilization, you have quite a bit of capabilities to play around with the data that is displayed. Okay. All right, so now that we've gone through a couple of reports, we can now open up for questions. I know that was quite a bit of information, so. If you don't have any questions and there's a specific part that you would like to see again, just let me know in the chat and I can display more as well. Yes, this report will be available under the Kosmo Campfire section of the website. All right. Don't have any other questions coming in. The next campfire session, we will be reviewing the role utilization report that exists as a visual force page within Mission Control, and give further breakdowns on the utilization formulas that we have in that report and how to use that component. Few more seconds here for any questions. It does not have to be related to reports. It can be related to other features in Mission Control. And I don't have any other questions. So thank you everyone for joining in. I hope you were able to gain quite a bit of information on Salesforce reports. Please feel free to leave some suggestions or recommendations. You can send those to support@aprika.com.